My wife Tina and I are expecting our first child, and we recently moved into a new house to start our family. It's a beautiful home, with lots of natural light and plenty of space for us to grow into. However, as we started settling in, we began to notice some strange occurrences. It started off small, things like doors closing on their own or objects moving from one place to another. At first, we just shrugged it off as our imaginations, or maybe the wind, but the occurrences kept happening and became increasingly odd. One night, Tina and I were sitting in the living room watching TV when we heard footsteps upstairs. We both assumed it was just the cat and ignored it, but then we heard a loud bang, followed by what sounded like someone running down the stairs. We were both startled and quickly turned off the TV to listen, but the noise stopped. Another time, we were in the kitchen cooking dinner when we heard a woman's voice whisper, "Hello," right behind us. We turned around, but no one was there. It was just the two of us in the house. Things really started to escalate when we began seeing things. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to see a figure standing at the foot of our bed. It was completely dark, but it felt like it was staring right at me. I turned on the lamp and the figure disappeared. Tina had her own encounter when she saw a little girl in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. She thought it was a real person and called out to her, but the girl disappeared right before her eyes. We tried to ignore these occurrences and convince ourselves that it was just our imagination, but it became too hard to deny. We decided to do some research and discovered that the house had a dark history. It was rumored to have been the site of a gruesome murder-suicide several years ago. After talking to some neighbors, we found out that the previous tenants had also experienced strange occurrences in the house. We even brought in a paranormal investigator who confirmed that there was indeed a presence in the house. We're still not sure what to do about it, but we're considering bringing in a medium to try and communicate with the spirit and see if we can come to some sort of resolution. In the meantime, we're just trying to take things one day at a time and hope that we can find some peace in our new home. Since discovering the history of the house and confirming the presence of a spirit, Tina and I have been doing our best to cope with the situation. We've tried various things to try and ease the tension in the house, like burning sage and playing calming music, but the strange occurrences haven't stopped. One day, while we were both out running errands, we received a call from our neighbor. She told us that she had seen someone moving around in our house and thought that we were home. We told her that we weren't home and she quickly hung up the phone, frightened. Tina and I immediately rushed back to the house to see what was going on. When we arrived, we saw that the front door was slightly open. We cautiously entered the house, only to find that everything was completely quiet and still. We searched every room, but found no signs of anyone being there. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As the weeks went by, the strange occurrences became more frequent and more intense. We started to feel like we were losing our minds. One night, I woke up to find that all the furniture in our bedroom had been moved to the opposite side of the room. It was as if someone or something had rearranged everything while we were sleeping. It was clear that we needed to take drastic action if we were going to be able to live in the house. We decided to call in a team of paranormal investigators to help us understand what was going on and hopefully find a solution. The investigators came and set up all sorts of equipment, like cameras and audio recorders. They conducted a thorough investigation of the house and eventually presented us with their findings. They had captured several unexplained images and sounds, including what sounded like a child's laughter and a woman's voice whispering, "Help me." We were both frightened and relieved to finally have some sort of explanation for what was happening in our home. The investigators told us that the spirit in the house was not malevolent, but was simply trying to communicate with us. They suggested that we try to communicate back and see if we could find some sort of resolution. Following their advice, we set up a quiet space in our house and tried to communicate with the spirit. We asked her questions and waited for responses. It was a strange and eerie experience, but we eventually came to understand that the spirit was that of a young girl who had died in the house during the previous owner's murder-suicide. We were able to help the spirit move on by performing a cleansing ritual and offering prayers for her. After that, the strange occurrences in our house ceased completely. We were able to finally live in peace and start our family in our new home, knowing that we had dealt with the ghosts of its past. Moving into a new place can always be exciting, but it can also bring unexpected surprises. Let me tell you a story about a scary experience that my wife and I had when we moved into our new home. My wife and I had been searching for a new place for months, and we finally found the perfect home. It was a beautiful, old Victorian house with plenty of character and charm. The house was situated in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, and we were thrilled to make it our own. On the day of our move, everything went smoothly. We had hired a moving company to help us with the heavy lifting, and we spent the day packing up our belongings and getting settled in our new home. As the evening approached, we were exhausted from the move and decided to order takeout for dinner. While we were waiting for the food to arrive, my wife decided to explore the house a bit. As she walked around, she noticed something strange in the basement. The basement was large and spacious, but there was a small room at the far end that looked like it had been sealed off. The door was old and rusty, and there was a padlock on it. My wife couldn't resist her curiosity, so she approached the door and tried to open it. But it was locked tight. We decided to ask our real estate agent about the sealed room. She told us that the previous owner had used it as a storage space, but that it had been sealed off for years. She didn't know what was inside, but she warned us that the previous owner had been a bit strange and that there might be something peculiar about the room. As the days passed, we couldn't help but feel drawn to the sealed room in the basement. We couldn't shake the feeling that there was something mysterious and exciting inside. So, we decided to try and find a way to open the door. After a bit of research, we discovered that the previous owner had left a key to the padlock hidden in the garden. We went outside and searched for the key, and eventually found it under a pile of leaves. We rushed back to the basement and eagerly unlocked the door. As we stepped inside, we were hit with a musty, stale smell. The room was small and cramped, and there were cobwebs covering the corners. But what really caught our attention was the strange object that was sitting in the middle of the room. It was a small, wooden box, intricately carved with symbols and runes. It looked ancient and mysterious, like something out of a fantasy novel. We couldn't resist the temptation to open it, so we carefully lifted the lid. Inside the box was a small, leather-bound book. It was old and worn, with faded writing on the cover. As we flipped through the pages, we realized that it was a journal, filled with strange symbols and drawings. The more we read, the more fascinated and disturbed we became. The previous owner had been obsessed with the occult, and the journal detailed his experiments with dark magic and spells. It was clear that he had been using the sealed room as a place to conduct his experiments. As we read on, we began to feel a strange presence in the room. It was as if someone or something was watching us. We quickly closed the journal and locked the box, feeling like we had uncovered something dangerous and mysterious. From that day on, we tried to forget about the sealed room and the mysterious box. But we couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something that we shouldn't have. It was a reminder that sometimes, the mysteries of a new home can be both thrilling and dangerous. We had been searching for a new place for weeks, and we finally found a beautiful apartment in a high-rise building in the city. The apartment was spacious and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a stunning view of the city skyline. On the first night in our new apartment, we decided to celebrate with a bottle of wine and some takeout. As we sat down to eat, we noticed something strange happening with the lights. The lights in the apartment kept flickering on and off, as if there was a problem with the electrical wiring. At first, we didn't think too much of it, but as the night went on, the flickering became more intense and frequent. We tried to ignore it and focus on our dinner, but it became impossible. The flickering was so distracting that we couldn't have a conversation without being interrupted by the sudden flashes of light. As the night wore on, the flickering became even more intense. We tried turning off all the lights in the apartment, but it didn't help. The flickering continued, even in complete darkness. That's when we heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was knocking on the window. But when we looked outside, there was no one there. We brushed it off as our imagination and tried to go to sleep. But as soon as we closed our eyes, we felt a strange presence in the room. It was as if someone or something was watching us. We tried to ignore it and go to sleep, but the feeling persisted. The next morning, we contacted the building maintenance to check the electrical wiring. They inspected the apartment thoroughly but found nothing wrong. The flickering had stopped, and there was no explanation for the strange occurrence. But we couldn't shake the feeling that something mysterious and inexplicable had happened. It was a reminder that sometimes, the unknown can be both fascinating and terrifying. After the strange occurrence in our new apartment, my wife and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We tried to go about our daily lives, but the nagging feeling persisted, and we were constantly on edge. One evening, as we were returning home from dinner, we noticed that the lights in the hallway were flickering, just like they had in our apartment. We brushed it off as a coincidence and took the elevator up to our floor. But when we got off the elevator, we noticed something strange. The hallway was completely dark, except for a faint light coming from under our apartment door. We approached cautiously, and as we got closer, we could hear a strange chanting coming from inside. We opened the door slowly, and what we saw inside shocked us to our core. There were several people in our apartment, dressed in strange robes and performing a ritual. In the center of the room was a glowing object, pulsating with an otherworldly light. As soon as they noticed us, they stopped chanting and turned to face us. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a low, guttural voice. "You should not have come here," he said. "This place is not meant for you." We were terrified, but we managed to run out of the apartment and down to the lobby, where we called the police. When they arrived, they found no trace of the cultists, and the glowing object had disappeared. We never found out what had happened that night, but we knew that our new apartment was not what it seemed. We moved out soon after, and to this day, we still have nightmares about the strange occurrence and what might have happened if we had stayed in that apartment for any longer. Thanks for watching. Which story do you like best? Please leave a comment below and be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, let us know what kind of story you would like to hear next, or if you have a story you would like to share. We would love to hear from you, so please leave us a comment or email us.